Well, hello, regular Drews.
Hi, everyone. This is so exciting.
I know. Welcome to episode 87, where we will be discussing another Her Interactive PC game. This one, number 6, The Secret of the Scarlet Hand.
Well, aren't you a regular Nancy Drew?
I learned that from the Nancy Drew detective.
Okay, go.
You think you can follow the clues and solve the case of the missing condiment, Nancy Drew?
Because I've read every Nancy Drew mystery ever written.
Nancy, please tell me you're joking.
Wow, you suck at this Nancy Drew stuff. You should get a new hobby.
My name is Carson Drew, and this is my assistant, Nancy.
Nancy Drew.
It's curtains for you, Miss Drew.
Nancy Drew strikes again.
A regular Nancy Drew.
I would have to try to remember, but I think that this may be the first game we ever played together.
Really?
I think it might be.
Aww.
I know
I can't remember.
it's the third game I ever played, because first was Final Scene for me, and then Treasure in the Royal Tower. This was my third one, and I think we actually played this one together. So it feels extra special just because of that.
That's so sweet. Yeah, I have absolutely no recollection. No, Corey, I realized the other day, we've been friends for over 20 years. I don't know if you know that.
Yep.
It hurts. It's like a knife to the gut, thinking I've even been alive for that long.
When we met, we were 10 years old. So that's twice as long as the age we were at the time. That's so funny.
So, like, we've officially known each other for 2/3 of our lives.
Yep.
So, like, wow. So, like, no, I have no memory.
It was so long ago.
What the first game was? Yeah, because it's been so long.
It's probably about 20 years ago. But I remember, I think that this is the first time we ever see a glimpse of Nancy in a game. And we don't even see her. We just see the silhouette. And I remember, like, asking something about that. And you were like, oh, no, that's, like, the only time they're ever going to show you anything of Nancy. So don't get used to it. Because I had only played 2 games at this point. But you had already played everything that was already out. And I think this was 2000. Well, I think the game came out in 2002, but I don't remember what year we were playing it. It probably was like 03 or 04. But
probably. Gosh. Okay, now I have to like do math backwards. Okay.
Because I think that you had already played more of the games than I had by the time that we had played this together.
Yeah, it probably was like, 2003, 2004. You're probably right. But yeah, no, I had played. I remember, I think the first game that I played was Message in a Haunted Mansion.
Probably.
Because I played them with my sister, and we used to check them out from the library. That was like my first introduction, because I remember we got our home computer pretty soon around that time, like Windows 2000. Like, it was actually might have been 98. Anyway, and we would go to the library and check out computer games to play on the computer together. And when we saw the Nancy Drew one, I was like, oh my God, like, I love these books. Like, we have to get it. We have to check it out. We have to play it. And, the rest is history. But so I had played all of them that existed because I was so excited about them. But yeah, no, I don't know. Wow.
And it's such a good game, too. Like, what a good one for us to play together for the first time.
Truly. It was, released, like you said, August 12th, 2002. Which at this time, like, just that seems like such another universe,
right?
2002.
Jeez.
Wow. Yeah, we would have been like
5th graders.
Yeah, when this came out.
Yeah,
wild.
Jeez.
Wild. But it's honestly, no, it's such a good game. It's so good. Like, the structure of it, how everything works. It's like leaps and bounds ahead of even Final Scene, which was just before this. Like, they clearly made like such progress towards like understanding how like the games should be structured and how it is that you should like accomplish tasks and stuff, because Final Scene is pretty much you have to do things in a particular order, you know, like and it takes place over the course of 3 days. And so there are certain things that you have to do on each of those days in order to progress to the next day.
It's very structured.
Scarlet Hand is not like that. Like, you have like the ability to like control time, and there are certain things that you can only do within certain windows of time per day. But like overall, you could spend a week, 2 weeks, like sleep, like you could spend as long as you want to basically doing the game. So it's like, yeah, it's just a whole different thing. And so I think they really stepped it up when it came to like figuring out how to develop a game into more than just it being less narrative and more like player driven. You know what I mean? So yeah.
It's like almost perfect that we're covering this right after we just finished Seven Keys. I don't want to say it feels like a prequel because it's like it's so different, almost, because we're searching for 6 keys instead of 7. But then it also, I mean, obviously it's a very super early game in this series, but it is like a shining example of what a small company is capable of doing in terms of like hitting their stride and like really getting it right. This is just an absolute masterclass in edutainment. It just absolutely blows you away with how much they pack in here. It's an absolute masterclass in storytelling, especially the subtle ways that they do it. It almost feels like Mystery of the Seven Keys, they were trying to hit all the same points that this game hits and hits them perfectly. The fact that like so much of our lore for the series starts in this game. Seven Keys kind of like tries to pay homage in that way with trying to really hit heavy on the Sunny Dune references and Coco Kringle stuff. Like, this is where that all starts. This is the inception of that. And it's like peak her interactive lore time. I don't know. It's just perfect. It's so good. It's such a good game.
And like you were saying with the whole edutainment value, I truly believe that this is the most educational Nancy Drew game that exists.
Oh,
it's
100%.
Scarlet Hand.
Yes.
100%. Yeah. Like, you could play this in a class, like, learning about Mayan history and
people have.
art.
Like, plenty of teachers use this in their curriculum, which is amazing.
Because it's literally, every single piece of it is educational. I don't think there's a single puzzle or game that you play in Scarlet Hand that doesn't teach you something related specifically to the Maya, like.
And it's not just that; it's also like provenance and smuggling,
like art,
and
and also like conceptually like teaching like children like what's important about that, right? Like why it's relevant, like about theft and art theft and stealing and like cultural appropriation and like all of this stuff, like big, and also like showing how people land on different sides of an issue without being good or bad, or like, so it's just so nuanced and such a nuanced thing to be teaching to 10-year-olds. You know what I mean?
Really, you have to credit Her Interactive for this one with how much like research and everything they put into it, because I happen to know that they got actual experts in Maya culture to consult on this game, which is wonderful. But then also just like the fact that they went out of their way to put in the stuff about like the provenance and like, we shouldn't be letting cultures steal from one another and profit off of those practices. So it just, I didn't expect it. I guess as a child, I didn't expect it to be as like nuanced as it is.
And you don't really think about it. That's the thing. No. Is like when you're doing something that's edutainment, quote unquote, you're learning, but it's seamless. It's also it's presenting all these ideas to you, but really what you're having a good time.
Yeah.
You're not thinking about, I'm learning this or that. Like, I'm playing a game and it's fun and the characters are hilarious and interesting, and like so not only do they hit all of that, they do really well at presenting all of these really important ideas and history and learning and knowledge and culture and all of that stuff, but also they make a really enjoyable game. Like, it's so much fun to play and so cool and such a vibe. Like, it's so good. I don't even know what to say about it. It's just so good. So good.
It's a shining star for sure of the series.
Truly.
Definitely.
Truly. Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, I love it so much, and we haven't even started.
I know. But I almost feel like it's so good. I almost don't like know what to say about it because it's just. I mean, it's definitely not my favorite game. But the only reason why it's not. I mean, it's definitely one of my favorite games. But the only reason why it's not my favorite game is because so many of the games are so good.
Of course,
you know what I mean? And so it's like, how do you rank, your favorites? Like, how do you rank donuts and ice cream? Like, they're both delicious. Like, I can't, how can I choose?
Of course.
Right? One day I feel more like eating donuts and one day I feel more like eating ice cream, but like both great.
Right.
You know what I mean? So it's like, I don't know. Great. 10 out of 10, no notes. Are we done?
I feel like the biggest drawback to it is just literally just the year that it was produced in and the limitations that go along with that.
Right.
Like, it's 2002. It's going to be a little clunky sometimes with navigation. It's really not even that bad navigation-wise, graphic-wise. It's all pretty solid for the time. I mean, there's a few like programming things that are annoying, like, you have to call certain people from the hotel room rather than the phone at the museum, which is just, annoying. But that's really just it being a game from 2002, and that's really all that it is. So
yeah. 3 words?
Maya, culture, history. Yeah.
It has to be Maya, has to be one of the words because that's literally what the whole game is about. And then also I feel like at its core, what this game really is like a workplace drama.
Yes.
It's like about like bosses and interns and it's about Maya, but it's really more about like the relationship that all these people who work in this one place in this one field have to each other.
Right.
They're like art dealers and, people at the Mexican consulate and like how they all like interact and kind of don't like each other and have to work together. And, I think it's just peak workplace drama. And you're this intern and you've been smacked in there in the middle of all of this and you're like trying to navigate like these complicated relationships between these people. Like it's just funny to me, but I think that's definitely part of it.
Absolutely.
And then so I think we could make it either about the crime, in which case it would be like heists
or smuggling,
or I think we could go in the comical, which I think is like the bulk of what you end up doing in this game is just calling people.
It is a lot of phone calls.
You have so many phone calls. Like literally, I would have to call 5 people when I'm sitting down at my desk or whatever. Like I gotta call Franklin, then I gotta call the art restoration place, then I gotta call Franklin back. I gotta call, like all of these, so many phone calls. And also it's 2024 and I forget how phones used to work.
Oh yeah. The old technology in this is pretty humorous as well.
Yes.
There's some pieces of technology that I forgot existed. Yeah.
Yeah. And so it's just making me think back to a time of when like, oh my God, like you really had to have a phone to be able to do work. You can't send an email. Like nobody's sending emails or like it's just calling people and talking to people on the phone. Like it's wild.
And when you are calling, it's all like to do with like, okay, send me your heisted item, smuggle it over to me. So it's kind of all entwined. I don't know.
Yeah.
Either old technology and old phones, landlines maybe.
Yeah.
Or smuggling.
Yeah.
Maybe we just need 4 words.
That's what we'll do. 4 words. Maya, workplace drama, smuggling, landlines.
Perfect.
Okay, so before we get into the summary, I do want to talk a little bit about the game mechanics.
Okay.
Because this is an older game, I just want to remind everybody what those are like if you haven't played those before or if it's been a while, right? So in these kind of classic Nancy Drew games from this era, when you enter the menu, it's that classic stacked book menu with just the most banger intro music you've ever heard in your life.
Best of all time. Incomparable.
Also, you have your choice of junior and senior detective right when you start. There's also a tutorial option. Have you ever played the tutorial on these classic games, Corey? Yeah.
You get to have a conversation with Mr. Woogle Woggle.
It's been a long time since I've done it. I didn't do it this time around, but I really need to because I feel like it would be really interesting looking back at it. It's been a long time.
I know that there are a few different versions. Like the one after Danger by Design, they switched to the intro where you're like in Nancy's bedroom. This is my center of operation. And that when you get to talk to Mr. Woogle is like a practice conversation, how to interrogate a suspect. I think for this one, it's just the bedroom from Treasure in the Royal Tower, where it's like, go over to the radiator and click on this.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. And we also talked about kind of the time control, which is not a hallmark of the classic games, but this is particular to this one. But so that's just basically the only reason why I mention that again is because, of course, as we go through the summary, it's not the order in which we talk about it is not the order in which it has to happen. It's just an order that you can play the game in. So.
And you can jump through time too. The alarm clock in Nancy's room, you can set it to whatever time you want to just like jump to nighttime, daytime, whatever.
Exactly.
And I do love that you can come in at night, even though, like, you don't need to. Yeah. There's never a time where it's like, oh, I have to be sneaky. There's no other time that I'd be able to. No, you can just go. It's great.
Oh, my God. I don't know why, but being in the museum at night is so scary.
Yeah.
It freaks me out. And I know that, like, literally there's actually no difference, like, between, I mean, aside from, like, this, you know, the little picture that you get when you walk in of like whether or not it's nighttime or daytime. But knowing that it's nighttime when you're walking around the museum alone, in the garden in particular, is like next level creepy. Yeah. I don't know why.
This game scared me. The ending scared me as a child.
Yeah. Oh gosh, yeah. We'll talk about that when we get there, but it's dark. It's pretty dark.
It's not like a spooky game in the sense that there's like a haunting or something, but it's not like intended to be as scary as it is, I don't think.
I mean, I don't know.
Some of it's intentional, but I think as a child, it really got to me because it's like, I don't know, just more scary.
No, there's something, and maybe it was because when we were playing it, we were so young, but there's something about these early games that go really hard. Yeah. Like Final Scene with Maya trapped in that thing that you have to like, you can use the axe to try to break her out. Like, oh my God. And, you know, Stay Tuned for Danger is super scary and threatening. Yeah. Like they go pretty hard, you know?
We need to read this book because this time in the series of games, they were so faithful to the original book that it was adapted from. And the book is also called Secret of the Scarlet Hand. Yeah. So I have to imagine that it's pretty intense just because of that. So it'll be fun.
Oh my gosh. Oh, okay. Should we jump in?
Yes, let's do it.
Okay. Do you want to start us off, Corey?
Sure. Let's see here. So it's our classic start, just like any other game from this kind of era in the game series. We get a letter that Nancy is writing to Carson, and she's like reading us the letter as the intro to the game. So we get this kind of info dump right away. First of all, Carson is in Africa. That doesn't ever come back or be relevant at any time. We can't call him in the game. Maybe they're just explaining that's why, because he's out of the country.
I just thought it was interesting.
Yeah, it is very interesting. Like, we never mention it again. We never hear, like, how is Africa? We don't get a reason why he's there.
Yeah, we don't know why. What is he doing in Africa?
He's just in Africa.
Oh, you know what? Actually, I think there is a point where we talk to Franklin, and he tells us he got a postcard from Carson and how much he enjoyed his safari. So maybe he's just on vacation.
Good
or
for him.
Or maybe it's like a work trip, and he just happened to take, like, a safari tour kind of a thing. But, yeah.
Maybe so. Well, Carson also, I guess before his trip, he arranged for Nancy to have a summer internship this year. She is going to be working as the deputy curator at Beach Hill Museum in Washington, D.C. This is a museum that specializes, I guess, in like cultural history, not really sure specifically, but right now they have an exhibit going on specifically about the ancient Maya. Oh, thanks to nepotism. Yes, this is because Carson's good friend is a member of the museum's board. His name is Franklin Rose. He's going to be one of our phone contacts throughout the game, so we'll get to talk to him a little bit later. Our boss in this internship is going to be named Joanna Riggs, and there is a lot of buzz around Joanna right now because she has recently managed to secure the loan of a very large, very significant monolith that is very important to Maya culture. We'll learn more about why later, but she has managed to secure that as part of the exhibit. And in fact, that's going to be like one of the main centerpieces of this. It's absolutely massive, and it is going to be like in the garden area of the museum. Because of this huge find, the museum is currently short-staffed and the doors are currently closed because we are working on setting up for the exhibition. So there's no like actual museum visitors right now. It's just going to be a very limited staff.
Convenient.
Yes. The important part of this, though, is Nancy is not here for a mystery. She's not doing an internship to like solve a mystery, anything like that. It's really just a summer job for her, I guess, just getting stuff on her resume. So we go straight from that letter into a cutscene in the museum where Nancy has just met Joanna, and Joanna is showing us one of the museum's prized possessions. This is probably the other like main centerpiece of this whole exhibit. This is a jade carving of King Pakal from the year 615 AD. This is an absolutely priceless artifact, and Joanna, she was able to acquire it thanks to someone named Taylor Sinclair, who is like this art dealer, antiquities expert, who she says is like a wizard with these types of deals. This is where we see the little the cutscene like cuts away from Nancy, and we just see her little silhouette. And so we don't actually see her, but we see her like standing next to the Pakal thing because it's in like this big case in the museum. But then we cut back to Joanna's office, and we're talking to her a little bit more in her office. And she tells us that this is a really critical time for the museum. And even though Franklin Rose vouched for us via Carson, she's not here to babysit us. So we're going to be kind of on our own. She doesn't care who our father is.
Can I just
Good
say,
for you, Joanna.
I love this so much. I love this angle that they set this game up for. It's like recognizing that Nancy is a little bit of a Nepo baby in this like situation, and it gives us like it's like a privilege check, right? Yeah. Like we recognize Nancy's privilege. We're doing that here. And also it sets up like this opposition for her, right? Like, or like we as the player, we have to work harder because of this now. Like we don't just get things handed to us. Like we actually have to do the hard work by ourselves. And so like it makes it so much more rewarding of a playing experience to have it set within this like framework.
Yeah.
I just love this. Chef's kiss to whoever came up with that storyline.
Truly, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, it's already so good. It starts off
I know.
so great. Joanna starts telling us a little bit more about the monolith, though. She is super proud of being able to get it instead of like another museum getting it. And she says that she became a curator in the first place because she wanted to try to make as many artifacts available to as many people as possible. And she says that that's what everyone wants, or what everyone should want, unless you're Alejandro Del Rio. We'll meet him. We'll meet him later, but she won't really tell us any more about him or why she mentioned him or anything like that. But she does tell us that this monolith is 1,500 years old, and it is this massive pillar of stone that has a ton of Maya glyphs carved into it. And like I said, it's in the garden right now, and Henrik van der Heun, who is this world-renowned expert in Maya culture and Maya glyphs, he's really good at translating these glyphs. He actually came to the museum recently just to work on this monolith, and his theory is that this monolith was made at the special request of King Pakal, who was maybe like the biggest or most important of the Maya kings from the time. But we don't actually know the purpose of this monolith. It's just this giant rock with a bunch of glyphs carved into it, and Henrik is working on translating it. She tells us that there is a task list set up for us in the lab, and once we've completed those, come back to her and we'll regroup. And then she tells us to go ahead and take a look around the museum. So at this point, we can look around and explore a little bit. We're still in Joanna's office right now. It's filled with a bunch of old books, maps, Maya artifacts, all sorts of fun stuff. I mean, it looks like an office. She's got her desk with a little microscope on it, and she's got, a bunch of cool pictures on the wall and stuff, some posters for different exhibits she's worked on. And then in the corner, we see an article in a magazine, some like archaeology magazine, I guess, but there's an interview in that with someone named Prudence Rutherford. If you're not familiar with the game series already, Prudence Rutherford is going to become a recurring phone contact in at least 2 more of the games. She's in Danger by Design, Phantom of Venice. She comes back a few different times. Is there anything else?
Those are the 2 that stand out to me because those are the 2 where we have to actually like do things with her. Gosh, I can't. I'm sure she's in another one. It's just not coming to mind right now.
But we'll learn from this article that she is this well-to-do arts patron. I think of her just as kind of this like older socialite that is just kind of vibing and doing nothing but going to like charity events and stuff like that.
Right.
But she lives in Topeka, Kansas, and this magazine is featuring this fire ruby necklace that she had that contains this jade carving it's not from her great-great-grandfather, but her great-grandfather was an archaeologist who found this carving at a dig in 1898, and it's a real Maya artifact. So great job putting it on the necklace.
I know.
Way to take care of things. But the carving is of a glyph that Prudence is going to tell us stands for something with snake, green, and south. We don't learn this just yet, but we'll call her later and she'll tell us the meaning of...
It's in the article.
Oh, it does? Okay. Because she says one on the phone as well.
Yeah.
And she keeps the necklace at her villa. Is that in Kansas as well? I don't know.
Yes. Yeah, her villa in Kansas. Yeah, Topeka.
Yeah, she can't bear to have it locked up in some bank vault, even though the insurance company advises her not to just like have it laying around.
Yeah.
She's very interesting. And then after we are done in Joanna's office, we can go look around the lobby. It is a pretty grand museum. I don't know. It's all super beautiful. It's all like marble tiled, and it's got all this nice stonework, and there's lots of nice plants everywhere. There's even like a little water feature in the corner with like a little fountain on it. It's nice. In the corner of like a little alcove, we found a little crumpled up piece of paper on the floor that is actually like this unsigned contract for the loan of the monolith between the government of Mexico and Beach Hill Museum. And basically, it looks like whoever has been working on this contract has been going back and forth on the costs. And it looks like maybe we actually kind of lowballed Mexico, and Mexico agreed to give us a lower price for this. Joanna has already signed it, but Alejandro Del Rio, who is the senior cultural attaché to Mexico and works at their embassy, he has not signed it yet. So that's actually going to be one of our tasks, is to take this over and have him sign it. From this part, though, we're in the like lobby of the museum. We can look around at like the little front desk area, and then we can go down into the museum. Basically, there are like 6 little subsections of the museum you can look at. So like Maya language, Maya culture, Maya gods, Maya food, and like there's all these different subtopics that you can go and see. So it's set up like that. And in the center is this like massive temple replica that's got a bunch of games in it. We'll go in there later and play through some of the games, but that's essentially the setup in the museum. Beyond the temple is like a garden in the backspace, and then there's like some offices and the shipping and receiving room. But that's our space that we're working here. Do you want to take it from here?
Sure. So from the lobby, you can also exit the museum, and that takes you to a subway map where you can visit other locations. At this point, at the start of the game, you can only go to your hotel and the museum, but it is kind of important to mention that because the hotel room kind of acts as a little bit of a home base for Nancy. It's where her laptop is. It's also where we talked about you have your alarm clock where you can control the time, right? So like, obviously the Mexican embassy is only open between 8 a.m. and 5 p.m. So like you can only go to certain places at certain times. So that's important. You can also, on your laptop, Nancy keeps all the details of the case, and you can also look at that for like kind of a log of what's been going on to kind of help keep track of things. That's not so much, we don't get our task list or our checklist down at the bottom menu. Is too early for that, but you can kind of use that as a little bit of a guide. And there's also a phone in Nancy's hotel room where we can call our phone a friend contacts, who at this point is just Bess and George. And Bess and George don't really they don't give us any like important information that we need to solve the mystery. Like you can solve the mystery without ever calling Bess and George. So I think we could just mention it right off the bat that there is a little bit of a plot going on with them if you do call them. Basically, they're just stuck inside in River Heights because it's raining. They're playing Go Fish. And also, at a certain point, the Hardy Boys end up visiting them, and the Hardy Boys become phone contacts for us, so we can call them as well. And basically, we can just talk to either Bess and George or Frank and Joe, and they can help us and give us hints on how to solve any of the puzzles.
This is what I was talking about with Mystery of the Seven Keys, where I wish that our phone contacts just gave us a little bit more, where we can just do this, where if we get bored, we can just call up Frank and Joe and be like, what's going on? How's the drive so far? Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Also, so Frank and Joe they stop by River Heights on their way back from a mystery. They're on their way back to Bayport, and they stopped to try to see Nancy, but of course Nancy was out on her mystery. And they visit Bess and George, and then they tell Nancy to call them on their car phone.
The old technology.
Oh my God, it's amazing.
He's like, we came to River Heights to see our favorite girls.
Mm-hmm.
Of course you
Oh my
did.
God.
Of course you did.
Like, it just starts early, you guys. The fever, the Frank fever, it starts early. Anyway, okay,
so good.
But anyway, back at the museum, we talked about, the exhibition room and all of that, and the garden. But so, like, if you go out into the garden, as soon as you explore the garden, you go, obviously, look at the monolith, the reason why we're all here, right? As soon as you approach the monolith, you hear, like, footsteps behind us, and we meet a character. We meet Sinclair, the crazy tie-wearing, pin mustache art dealer guy. He happens to know that we are a detective. Apparently, the board let this slip. The board of directors from the museum just told him that we were a detective. I guess that's fine, right? Because we're not here for a mystery, so it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
We're not undercover. Anyway, he tells us, though, that he's actually glad we're here because the museum may be in terrible jeopardy. We're like, what? And he says it's a sensitive subject, and so he doesn't want to talk about it here, but we can meet him in his office later, and he'll explain more then. Okay, so his office is now a location that we can travel to on the map, and so we'll go talk to him later. So back off the main hall, there's that little employees only section that you were talking about, and on one side is the lab with our desk with our list of to-dos that Joanna told us that we should get started on. Also on the desk is a phone, so we can also use the phone here. At our desk, we can see evidence of a past intern named Sunny June. Of course, Sunny June is also a recurring character that we do actually end up meeting in,
Game 30, Shattered Medallion.
Shattered Medallion. Yeah. So this is kind of like a big character for the Nancy Drew series, and this is our very first meeting of him. Based on what we can see on the desk, he definitely seems like a very interesting person, to say the least. He clearly believes in aliens. There's a little notebook in the side drawer that we can read where he's left all of these notes, which is helpful. We do need it to solve some of the puzzles in the later games, but he also has so many like little doodles in it of the other characters in the game that are a little bit disparaging. But it's very funny. Also, there's a drawer entirely full of Cocoa Kringle bars, which, how could you leave that?
I think this is our first Cocoa Kringle as well.
Is it?
I think this is when they introduced that, yeah.
Does she not have a Cocoa Kringle in her suitcase before?
Nope. I think that this is the introduction, yeah. So Sonny's obsessed with chocolate, and he's not just a believer of aliens. He believes that the aliens built the Maya pyramids.
Right. Yes. He believes that they... Didn't he say that... Doesn't Henrik tell us that Sonny thinks that the aliens abducted the Maya, too?
Probably. I think so. He's really into conspiracies, this guy.
Yes. Yes. And that'll play into the later games as well, actually. Okay, so on our desk, our to-do list, we have to reassemble a broken pot, bring that addenda that we found to the Mexican consulate for signature, order some shipping supplies, match recorded narrations to the correct displays in the main hall, and we also need to reorder the Maya numbering exhibit that's also in the main hall. So kind of throughout the game, you can work on that. You don't have to really do those in any particular order, but you do eventually have to do them all in order to progress. On the desk is also a taped list of vendors, and you can use that to order the shipping supplies that we need. And this is a very important spot in the game as well, because people will frequently leave notes on this desk as well as voicemails on the phone. So you frequently need to come back here and check this, because I kept forgetting to do that too. I kept waiting for things to happen. I'm like, what am I missing? I need to go check the desk because someone's definitely left me a voicemail. So that's important to know. Also in the lab is Henrik's desk. There's a ham radio and a manual and a business card for some place called the Chaco Canyon Cultural Center, which we will learn more about later. And depending on when you're here, Henrik may or may not be here at this time. I think by the time I got here in this playthrough, it was so late because I was looking through all of the exhibit and everything. He wasn't there. But I think he may be there if you'd go straight there instead of looking at all the exhibit stuff. So it just kind of depends on how you play. Over in the storage room, if we explore the storage room, there is a box full of Sunny's old stuff. And in here, we can find one of the pottery shards that we need to reassemble the pot. And there's also a floppy disk that we will need because that also has some information from Sunny on it that we need to solve a puzzle. But anyway, Sinclair says that there is trouble afoot at the museum, so let's go talk to Sinclair. He just is in an office downtown. It's not a super interesting place. His office, though, is kind of cool. He has all these big bookshelves and tons of stacked art on the wall, leaning against the wall. And the first time we go, he offers us a cookie from Oaxaca.
Yes.
Would you like a cookie? They're Oaxacan.
I will say, I know the joke in the game we'll learn later is that the cookies are expired and they're nasty.
Yes.
But I have found a recipe for Oaxacan cookies online.
Yes,
and they
you told
are
me this.
fantastic. They are so good.
Oh my gosh.
I love them.
So cool. Yes.
I just love dark chocolate, and it uses a lot of dark chocolate. And so it tastes like brownie consistency. It's so good. Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Anyway, Nancy declines the offer for a Oaxacan cookie, but we talked to Sinclair, and he tells us that Prudence Rutherford's fire ruby necklace was stolen. So this is the necklace that we learned about from reading the article in the magazine in Joanna's office. And he says 2 weeks after this theft, a display full of rare Maya artifacts was stolen from a museum in New Mexico. So he says this community, this art community is being trounced by thugs. He's also really a character.
Yeah.
See, this is what I'm talking about. These old games, all of these characters are so funny. They're hilarious. So entertaining to talk to. And so he says Beach Hill could be next. And he even approached Joanna to ask the board to update the museum's security. But Joanna said that she didn't think it was the right time to ask for money. And so he tells us he's so glad that we're here because we can help sniff out the stink of trouble and basically protect Beach Hill from any possible thefts, right?
We will try our best, Taylor.
We can also ask him about the painting that's behind his desk, which you think is just like a throwaway line, but it will be relevant later. He tells us that, isn't it fabulous? The artist is a teen in South Dakota named Poppy Dada, and apparently the art world is going crazy about her stuff.
I'm crazy about Poppy Dada, so...
Me too!
She's wonderful.
So, this is definitely a reference to Dadaism, right?
Yeah,
okay,
definitely.
Okay, just checking.
Unfortunately, she does not come back as a phone contact in later games. I would really like to talk to her later because she's a fun voice character, but we do see her art in many of the later games, so a nice little reference.
So at this point, we can also go to the Mexican consulate to talk to Alejandro. And this is a very interesting conversation. So he's manning the front desk for some reason. Please explain to me why the senior attaché or whatever his title is managing the front desk at the Mexican consulate.
Not just that, he seems to be the only person working there. And he's really just there to give an American teenager some trivia.
Yeah. Anyway, we talked to him, and he greets us as one of Joanna's pirates in training.
Yeah.
And he calls us a modern day conquistador, which is obviously not a compliment and is very, very interesting. And he is, of course, justifiably fired up about Indigenous art and history being stolen. And he basically gives Nancy a little bit of a history lesson and tells her that this theft has been happening as recently as the 1800s. And even though, thankfully now it's illegal to remove artifacts from their home country, there are still like thousands of antiquities floating around with questionable provenance. And so that's kind of the bulk of what he tells us.
I love this. I don't love the theft, but I love that Her Interactive put this in the game and like calls it out. Because it would have been so easy to just be like, here's our museum, and aren't we so great for all the things that we did to like get this here and show this off to people, and we profit off of this. No, we're actually going to talk about the other side of things, which is really important.
Yeah. And so he even specifically talks about Beach Hill and says that there is like no guarantee that the artifacts that are at the museum have legit provenance. And he also says something about greedy museum curators, which is clearly a little bit of a dig towards Joanna. So
that's
right. Interesting. Sorry. Yeah, we will learn later that he is very right. But yeah. He says that if it were up to him, Joanna and St. Clair should return all the artifacts in the museum to Mexico where they belong. And he does say something a little bit threatening and interesting. He says that his country will have its due even if he has to reclaim its artifacts with his own two hands.
Easier said than done, honestly, but
right, yeah, but of course,
interesting motive.
Interesting, and will be very relevant to think about later.
Mm-hmm.
But Nancy's just an intern. She just has a job to do. So we have to like get him to sign this addendum to this contract, but he won't sign it. Basically, he just says, I'll take it, I'll look it over, and I'll bring it to Joanna later. Consider your task done.
Why isn't this done? They already have the monolith in the museum. Like, any payment should have already taken place by this point,
The addenda is really interesting if you read it. And I do wonder, obviously I am not any kind of expert on artifacts and contracts or any part of it really, but it's interesting when you read it because a lot of it is about, they're like delaying payment. Yep. So like there's a clause in there that says that like half of the payment will be paid up front upon delivery of the monolith, but then the other half of the payment was set to be paid like 30 days after the delivery, but they changed it to be like 90 days.
So and so it definitely doesn't have the money, or
it definitely seems like there's something about. They're just trying to like extend deadlines. They also lower the cost, like the actual payment amount on the addenda, and so it seems like they've been going back and forth. And like they paid up front, but now Beach Hill is trying to do like a shady workaround to get out of paying as much money as they originally agreed to, which is fucked up.
Yeah.
Excellent. Anyway, you want to take it?
Sure. So at this point, we go back to the museum and we can talk to Henrik a little bit more in the lab. He gives us some help on our tasks, and he also tells us a little bit more about Sunny June. He calls him Hurricane Sunny. Apparently this guy was just a super mess back when he was the intern. Probably makes sense that like he lost his job and that's why Nancy is taking over. But apparently he was constantly losing paperwork. He set off the fire alarm. He was just generally a menace, and he would not stop with this theory that the Maya were abducted by aliens. And just, I guess that like all of the Maya or accomplishments by the Mayan people can be attributed to aliens and not actually their accomplishment. Like he's just really into this conspiracy theory. But Henrik also tells us a little bit more about Maya glyph translation. Apparently it's very, very difficult, and he is clearly very good at his job. We also learn that he is very particular about his ham radio. He just really likes this little thing. It's sitting on his desk, and if we go mess around with it, he will tell us to stop. So clearly we need to come back and play with it when he is not here. If we ask Joanna about Henrik, we will learn that he came on board at Beach Hill just at the time that Beach Hill acquired the monolith. He actually asked them if he could come work for them because he was so eager to translate it, and even told them that he would take a pay cut if it meant he could come work for them. he actually used to work at Chaco Canyon Cultural Center, which is the place that he has the business card for, which is a museum in Mexico, or sorry, a museum in New Mexico. So very weird that he just like jumped over just for this special exhibit. But I guess it makes sense if he is like the expert in this field and he's coming to translate this untranslated thing.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
At this point, we're going to call in, or we're going to do a few of the things on our task list from Joanna. So one of the things is we need to call and order some office supplies. And we speak to, it's like Silvio's Bonanza or something.
Yeah.
And we call Silvio Jr. And he's like, oh, yeah, I can get an order started for you. What's the account number?
Mm-hmm.
You said Beach Hill? You're with Beach Hill? Y'all have a lot of audacity calling here again. Do not call back unless you are willing to pay those 6 unpaid invoices that we've sent you over the past few months.
No, he says they sent them to collections. He says we won't do business with you ever again.
Yeah.
Like, do not call back. Oh my god.
So I guess maybe Beach Hill is having some money problems. Yeah.
This is so interesting because this isn't even really part of the mystery.
Yeah.
Like, we'll have to talk about this later.
It's just extra. It doesn't have anything to do with the actual Maya exhibit or anything. It's just like we can't get bubble wrap because we won't pay.
Even the crime and the motive.
Mm-hmm.
Like, we'll have to come back to it and talk about it. But this is interesting.
Yeah.
Anyway.
It's interesting that we take like a good 10 minutes out of the game just for this and this whole dialogue and storyline. Just for it to be like hey, there's a hint of money trouble.
Mm-hmm.
Very interesting. So at this point, we can leave the lab, and I think we're going to go look around for something else, or maybe start on one of the tasks, which requires us to go out into the middle of the museum, or like the main part of the exhibit.
Mm-hmm.
And as we go to do so, sirens start going off, alarms start blaring, and Joanna comes rushing in, and she yells, "Beach Hill's been hit. Police are on the way."
Oh my god! I literally just got goosebumps, Corey. Just so played this game, and I'm still so hyped about it. This game came out in 2002, and I'm so hyped about it. Oh my god.
This is such a good moment, and not that we've like not been doing anything so far. We're all just doing tasks. Like, we're busy this whole time, but like nothing's really happened. There's no mystery. So we've got some good pacing in this game so far. It feels like you're on track.
Mm-hmm.
So then we cut straight back to the jade carving display, that little case that it was supposed to be in. And Nancy's just like right in front of this after the cutscene with Joanna and the police sirens and everything. We learn that this case has been smashed and the carving was stolen. And now there's like police tape up everywhere and like caution tape everywhere. But sitting on top of the display case, this empty display case that's smashed open, glasses everywhere, there's a piece of paper that just has a Scarlet Hand print on it. Somebody just painted their hand red, slapped it on the piece of paper, and then there's like three glyphs up there. Yes.
Sorry, it's just the Lord of the Rings reference.
I think it's 3 glyphs at the top of the paper. 3 Maya glyphs at the top of the paper. We don't know what they mean, but this Scarlet Hand is just sitting here where the jade carving used to be. So we go talk to Joanna, and she is stressed. Like, this is like the worst day of her career. We ask her at the police, worst day yet.
Right.
We ask if the police found anything, and she says that they took samples but couldn't promise anything. She says that she is going to start working on the insurance claim, but otherwise she knows that we're a detective, and she wants us to start investigating, figure out what happened here. So we go back to the display case and we take that piece of paper with the Scarlet Hand on it to take a closer look. And we go talk to Henrik because there's those glyphs on there and he's the translator expert. So we go ask him if he can translate, but he's not around. And this is kind of funny. We asked Joanna about it as well. And she's like, what am I? Like, or what does she say exactly?
I don't know.
Not chopped liver, but she's
basically.
Like, yeah, am I just unimportant around here? Henrik's not the only one who can translate. And so we give her the paper and she's like, obviously it says the magician suffers yellow death, which makes no sense. So it's obviously meaningless. Okay, maybe you're just not that great at translating as you thought, Joanna. We ask her about the red handprint. Like, is this significant to Maya culture? Is there meaning behind this? And she says, why don't you do a lab analysis to see what material made the print? So we're going to go back to the lab because there is like a little machine in there that can do this type of analysis. But when we get back to the lab, we see that there's a note on our desk from Henrik. And he says something has come up and he had to leave for a little bit.
Interesting timing, Henrik.
Very interesting timing. And he says, I need you to do a task for me while I'm gone. In the temple, in the giant temple in the middle of the museum, as I said, that there's like some games and activities in there. So it's actually a 3-story temple. Like you have to go into the top level first, solve everything in there, and then you get to the second level. Once you've done everything, the second level, you get down to the third level. So basically, he just wants us to go through the entire temple, go through all the levels, see if we can see if all the games are playable, if all of the the tasks in there make sense, just to see if it's going to function well when we actually have museum guests.
Yeah, and specifically there are quizzes at each level, and so he wants us to fact check those and make sure that the information to solve the quizzes is available in the exhibit.
Exactly. Yeah. So each level has a quiz in it. It has some sort of game that you can play, and then there is also another little not trivia quiz.
It's just random sometimes. One was a maze, I think, and so
but it's more knowledge based. Right. And so you might be matching the type of god to the name of the god. Like if it's the sun god, what's the sun god's name? The moon god, you're matching things, or you might be lining up numbers to the calendar or something like that. Something where you're learning more edutainment value.
Also, all fun. All so fun.
So much fun.
And so great.
This is so fun.
It's really just a little part of the game. It's not super consequential except for the fact that you just have to do it to, move on or whatever. But just little tiny mini games that are so fun. Just so fun.
Is this the first time we've really had a proper mini game in a game? I know that the last game was Final Scene and it had that had the bee's knees in it, that little game with the dancer.
But you have to do that.
You have to do it, and it's really more of a puzzle. Even though it's technically an arcade game, technically it's more of a puzzle and you only do it once.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think this is probably the first. Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, you do have to do them in order to progress, but you also could go back and play that ball game as many times as you want.
Yeah, you can play as much, really. Yeah. So, I love this so much. It adds so much to it, and it also adds a lot of time to it as well, because you're having to, like I said, you're having to learn and go and check facts and everything in the museum exhibits. So that's fun. So he asks us, go through and play all the games and do all the quizzes and everything. We do also have a voicemail from Franklin Rose about the theft. He says that this is obviously very bad for the museum and he wants us to investigate, and he says give him a call. So we call him back and we tell him about the Scarlet handprint that was left, and he says that he is relieved that we're working on the case and just let him know how he can help. So at this point, we're going to start analyzing that handprint, and we go over to this little machine in the lab that can do a chemical analysis on it, and we learn that it is mercuric sulfide, which is mercury and sulfur. And Joanna tells us that this is cinnabar, which is actually what the Maya used to rub into carvings and artwork to add definition to it. And that's what, of course, gave it the red color as well. Beach Hill actually uses a good amount of cinnabar for restoration purposes because, of course, when you're restoring something, you want to use the same practices that the actual Maya people would have used when they were making it. So they actually have a lot, or they should have a lot, but they don't have any right now because there's some sort of holdup with this distributor. But they are on our contact list for the museum. So let's go call them. Do you want to take it from here?
Sure. So we call Keep It Real Restoration. Love it.
Yes.
The creativity involved in naming all of these businesses, so funny. And when we talk to them, they tell us that actually they shipped us supplies just last week. So he doesn't know what we're talking about with any kind of hold up. He says the initials on the name of the person who submitted the order is JR.
Oh.
Joanna Riggs?
Yeah.
Perhaps? Uh-oh. So somebody's lying? Probably. He says that the order wasn't actually shipped, though. Someone ended up picking up the order at their warehouse, but he doesn't know who because he wasn't there. but there's definitely no holdup with their supplies. So what was Joanna talking about?
Very interesting.
Yeah. He does tell us, though, that mercuric sulfide, that is such a mouthful, is highly toxic. And so if anyone like actually like put their hand in it and, you know, made a handprint on a piece of paper, then they could now be suffering from psychosis. Okay, also side note that is just now occurring to me. This handprint at the scene of the crime is a literal handprint.
Yeah. Wait.
So can we not just get handprints from people and compare it to the red handprint? How have I never thought of this before?
Right? Maybe he used a glove. Maybe the person used a glove or something?
Maybe, so it's just the shape of a hand. But I could have sworn that in the image, we can see like fingerprint. We can see like lines and like a palm print
You
line.
definitely can.
I gotta look it up. Secret of the Scarlet.
Well, even the picture on the box.
Yes. Okay. No.
So why was there not a good thumbprint that we could use in this?
It's totally. Hold. You can see the outline of the hand. Let me share my screen.
Yeah, this does not look like somebody who had a latex glove on and used it that way.
No, it's
which you should do if it's actually that toxic.
That is someone's like handprint. You can see, like, why are we not going around and taking Joanna's handprint or Henrik's handprint and comparing it to the handprint?
That's so funny.
Okay, but like, Corey, I played this game approximately 1 million times.
Right.
I've never thought of that before.
That's never occurred to me either. Even just hand size. Like, whose hand is this size, you know? That narrows it down so much.
But they even say in the game, they're like, like if, you know, I mean, they don't say it, they imply that if someone that touched it, it's toxic. So they could be crazy. And I've never thought, it's a literal handprint. Someone left a literal handprint at the scene of the, how stupid. Who chewed that? Why would you do that? Oh my God.
Oh, that is the mother of all plot holes right there. That's excellent.
Anyway, there's nothing we can do about this information yet. So at this point, you can finish all your other tasks if you haven't already, you know, working on ordering the number display, the audio clips, and putting the pot together. All of which, you know, it's not really important and relevant to go through how you solve each of those things, but you do need Sonny's notes on his little flash drive and also the notes that he has in his journal. Also working through the temple puzzles and the games to make it to the second level. On the second level of the temple, there is a quiz that has a question that we can't answer yet. There's no answer to it anywhere in the exhibit. So once we reach the second level, that's kind of as far as you can go at this point. But let's go talk to other people about this. When we talked to Alejandro about the theft, he tells us that he heard the alarms going off at Beach Hill, but he didn't know that something had been stolen until Henrik actually called to tell him that something was stolen. But so Alejandro was at the museum at the time of the theft.
He just glosses right over that. I was like, oh, yeah, I guess I was there. Yeah.
Yeah, he tells us that actually he was dropping off the signed addenda to Joanna like he said he would. So he's like, yeah, I told you I was going to be there. Like, it's no big deal, Nancy, you know, whatever. And he just figured that someone just like tripped a wire to the alarm. And so he left. Are you kidding me? Okay. Not like, oh, you're secretly glad that something got stolen from the museum that you hate the existence of.
And then you've said you will personally put your hands on the things to take them back.
Right. Mm-hmm. But basically, Alejandro doesn't seem to really care about the theft. And he even like tells us basically it's because like it's already been stolen from Mexico. And so it's like any further thefts is just, it's already stolen, so it doesn't matter.
Right.
Which is also wild thinking.
Right.
Like, okay, well, now it's going to go underground on the black market and nobody's going to know where it is. Like, you know, like you got no chance of recovering it then. You know, at least if it's at a museum, legally you can do things to try to get it back to Mexico. But like if you don't know where it is. Anyway.
Jeez.
Yeah. When we talk to Taylor about the theft, he is very distraught. He also happened to be in the museum when it happened, though. But of course, he thinks that this theft is linked to the thefts of Prudence jewelry case in Topeka and the theft at that museum in New Mexico. What was it called, Corey? Was it the Chaco Canyon Cultural Center?
That's weird.
That's so weird. Didn't Henrik used to work there?
Did he? And did
Because
he
got
come
that
over
business
here?
card on his desk, and then he literally left. Oh.
He left right after their theft.
Yeah.
To come here. Begged to come here.
Begged. Took a pay cut to come here.
Just before this theft.
That's very interesting.
I wonder if he's ever been to Kansas. Interesting.
Also, he's just missing now. He's gone.
He had something really important that he had to go do right after the alarms went off.
Disappearing a stolen artifact? Perchance?
He had to leave right away, but not before he had the chance to call Alejandro and tell him about this.
Anyway. Also, Taylor does tell us that red hands were also left at the scenes of both of those thefts in Topeka and New Mexico as well. So that's why he thinks they're connected. Obviously, they are connected if the red hands were left at all of those locations as well. At this point, when you talk to Taylor, though, he does say some, ethically disturbing things as well. Like how if he had been working, back in the day in, the 1800s when, all of these artifacts were, being found at the time, that he would be even more rich. And he says, someday, Nancy, I'll tell you a story about how Mexico lost its sense of humor. Oh, yikes.
Yeah, he makes it very clear that he doesn't care about showing provenance or going about things in an ethical way, so long as it means that the general public can somehow benefit from seeing these things in the museum.
Well, it's not even about that for Taylor.
Well,
it's about his pocket. It's about lining his pocket. He's clearly only in it for his own money and talking about how much more rich he would be, because he's already rich, but how much richer he would be if he had the opportunity to make deals before basically the laws have established that you can't just take things from other countries. Yeah. Wild. You want to take it?
Alrighty, so at this point we go back to the museum to talk to Joanna a little bit more, and she is gone from her office, so we start snooping a little bit. Oh yeah. Oh my gosh, this is such a good.
I know.
This is where the the subtext comes in, so heavy. So if we snoop around her office a little bit, we don't really find a lot on her desk.
There's a key in her drawer that we have to take that will open up the exhibit, glass cases in the hall. We're going to need that later, but other than that, there's not any information.
Yeah, I was trying to think if there's anything on the desk itself. I think really all the documents are just in the filing cabinet.
Yeah.
But if we go over to her filing cabinets, we find some provenance documents for the Pakal carving. And it also has, I just had to mention this a little bit, it just has some details in there about the sale of the product, but then it's also documents from Taylor Sinclair because he's the one that was handling the deal of all this. Have you read the letter?
Yes.
About the old couple that used to own
the air conditioning?
The carving? And it says that they passed away sadly because their air conditioning went out.
Yeah.
Okay. So I think somebody sabotaged their air conditioning.
Yeah. It's heavily implied. If you read that letter, it's heavily implied because the way that they phrase it is how unfortunate that their air conditioner went on the blink in one of the hottest summers, on record. Who could have predicted that would happen? Kind of a thing. Yeah.
To these elderly people. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think somebody sabotaged their air conditioning to steal their carving that they shouldn't have had in the first place, honestly. Why is that in some old person's private collection? Yeah. But so very sad. Whoever owned this previously has passed away now, and that is how the museum ended up getting it. But then yes, we take that key from her desk, and that's pretty much all that we can do here. And now we're going to go back to the little office lab area, and there we find a note on our desk that says that Joanna is not here actually because she was called down to the police station for further questioning.
Ruh-roh.
Yes. So I think we do a couple more things back in the employees only section of the lab, and then we go back out into the main area of the museum, and we kind of like come around the corner from the temple, or not the temple area. Yeah, the temple.
Garden.
Yeah, we're like coming out of the garden area around the corner of the temple. And when we do, we hear some yelling. And then we walk around and we see that Henrik has fallen down the steps of the pyramid and is just laying there like groaning.
Also, okay, side note. The pyramid is definitely a death trap.
Yeah.
And you're telling me that this exhibit has been set up to allow for little children to climb? Because it's definitely, this part of the exhibit is for kids. Like, it's definitely geared towards kids. So they're supposed to climb up these steep-ass stairs.
There's no railing or anything. Like, at least a railing needs to be added.
Nothing. And as evidenced by Henrik falling down them, it's clearly very dangerous. There's no, you could not get away with this. Even in 2002, you couldn't get away with this. This was only something that could exist probably no later than the early 90s, in my opinion. Like, there's
even
no
then,
way.
Yeah. Jeez. So the ambulance comes, they pick up Henrik, and then we get this cutscene. We're back at the hotel now, and we're on the phone with Bess and George, telling them everything that has happened. And we learn that Henrik has suffered amnesia from this fall.
Dear.
Also, this is very interesting. Like, Henrik told us to run through those activities because he had to leave. So, like, why was he in there when we got back?
Mm-hmm.
And what was he doing up there? And, like, if he's the one that basically set all this up and he's going up and down all this all the time, like, what happened to make him fall? Did he actually fall? Or was he pushed?
We don't know. And Henrik isn't telling because he doesn't remember.
Henrik doesn't even know his own name right now. So we go back to the museum and we check our voicemail on the phone there. And we get a voicemail from Nurse Bluefoot, opposite of Scarlet Hand, right? At the hospital.
Oh my god, duh.
Yeah.
See, this is what I'm talking about. Things I've just never thought of. I have been playing these games for literally 20 years.
Yeah.
It's just I never thought of that.
I love it so much. Every time you play one of these games, it doesn't matter how repetitive they are or how often you play them, you're always going to find some little detail. It's just, again, masters of telling stories through subtext and really, like, I don't know. It's just so good. Anyway. Nurse Bluefoot is the nurse that's assigned to Henrik, and he tells us that Henrik has no family that they've been able to contact. So nobody is like there for him. And also, he's been saying Nancy's name repeatedly ever since he woke up. And he doesn't even remember who Nancy is, but he just keeps repeating her name. So that's why the nurse is calling us to say, hey, can you, one, come see him? Because obviously he wants to see you. But also he's going to need a support person as he's like going through this process of trying to regain his memory. So basically, will you come and like bring things from the museum to like help us jog his memory? We also get a message from Joanna.
Oh my god.
Telling us that the board has suspended her and she is no longer even allowed inside the museum. And she basically asked to like call and plead her case to Franklin Rose to like ask him to let her back onto the staff.
It's pretty great being a Nepo baby now, isn't it, Joanna?
Isn't it?
Look who wants to cash in on our connections, Joanna. When before you didn't care who our daddy was. Well, now you do, don't you, Joanna? Sorry. I just think it's so funny.
Oh my gosh. Well, Franklin doesn't really care either about Joanna's fate. He's just like, we call him and he's like, I'm so sorry you've had to deal with this, Nancy. Like, this was not the plan for your internship. We wanted you to actually be able to get something out of this, and now it's like a mess. And he actually tells us that Joanna has been in the doghouse with the board for months now, and like financially things are not going well, and they view this as her just like gambling with the future of the museum.
Just a little harsh. I mean, honestly, like something got stolen. It's not like she sold something. Like,
right. Well, now he says now that they've lost the Pakal carving, this is like such a massive hit to the museum that he needs us to pick up both Joanna and Henrik's slack.
Oh
So
my
now
God.
we have to be a museum curator and this like archaeology expert with glyph translation skills.
We're an intern. What is going on? How can we be responsible for all of this?
The board had an emergency meeting and assumed that the best course of action at this point was to put the intern in charge of everything. Not that a board member couldn't come step in at this point. I'm sorry, if you're on the board of a museum, you are probably a little bit more qualified than the intern to run things for the time being. Even if it's just for the weekend while everything is getting sorted out with Joanna.
Yeah. You want someone qualified to lock the door at night. You know what I mean?
But no, what I mean? Nancy's the one with the keys.
My God.
We literally, we have Joanna's keys now.
Oh my God.
Oh my gosh. Okay, so he asks us to investigate, and he says that if we can recover the Pakal carving, he will consider hiring Joanna back. So she's
No
lost her
pressure.
job because a theft took place on her watch. That kind of sucks. But,
Yeah.
But anyway, we call Nurse Bluefoot back, and he tells us about the support person thing. So we agree to be Henrik's support person, and he tells us a little bit more about just like how amnesia works and like what it means for Henrik right now. He says that essentially Henrik's memory is not lost; it's just like injured. So we need to help him like getting his memory back. It's just like his brain's injured in a way that he can't access his memories. So in helping him heal, hopefully that will support him in getting some of his memories back. We're also told to bring in some images to put on he has like a little cork board in his hospital room that when we go visit him, we can like post the pictures up there. And while we're gone, he'll like look at them and it helps him remember things for the next time that we come back. We're also told to go easy on him, though obviously it's a little tough on him right now to remember anything big. We are going to start off right away with like, where's the Pakal carving? Where did you put it? And he's like, I don't know what that is. What are you doing to me, ma'am? But so we go visit the hospital at this time. We reintroduce ourselves. He doesn't remember us. He doesn't remember even the museum. But what he does remember is that since he's been in the hospital, someone named Joanna called to pick his brain for an access code.
I wonder, was this before or after she was suspended from, you know?
An access code to what?
Right.
What is Joanna trying to unlock? That's weird.
Yeah.
So he has no idea what that code means, but then we show him the Scarlet Hand paper, the one with the glyphs at the top. We put that on the
Go
corkboard.
easy, indeed. What's this, Henrik?
And we're like, so Joanna told us that this means magician suffers yellow death, and he's like, she's sloppy. She doesn't know what she's talking about. Clearly, that's not what this means. It actually means something else. And actually, I would know because I wrote it. Hold on.
What? Rewind!
Yes. And he tells us that actually it doesn't mean the magician suffers yellow death. It's something about a curse against fools. So we're like, Henrik, if you left this paper at the crime scene, does this mean that you stole the Pakal carving? And he says that he does not remember. And in fact, we are giving him a headache and he needs us to leave so that he can rest a little bit more. So we're going to come back a little bit later with some more memory aids. Do you want to take it?
Sure. So the first one that we can get, we have to talk to Taylor for. It ends up being an image or a photo of the Pakal carving that he had taken for insurance. It's not really important that we get that, but that's just the next one that we have to get. We can also go speak to Alejandro at this point, and he tells us that actually he is the one who called in the tip to the police about Joanna, causing her to be called in for more questioning, which caused her to be suspended from her position. And he basically accuses Joanna. He says the reason why he did this is because she was jeopardizing the museum's finances, but he won't give us any more details about that.
Well, we also are the ones that told him in the
we are
first
the one who
place
told
about like Joanna being a little bit weird. Yeah.
Right.
So then he went and called the police, and that's,
Exactly. Which, go Alejandro. But also, this is so interesting, and I want to talk about this later. too. But, of course, mostly right now we're suspicious of Henrik because he literally told us that he left the note at the crime scene. So it's probably a good time to talk to his previous employer, the Chaco Canyon Cultural Center. When we call them, we can speak to their director and tell her that a theft very similar to the one that happened at their museum has just happened at Beach Hill. And she'll tell us about their theft as well. She says that the handprint was also left at their crime scene, and she says it was also made out of cinnabar, just like ours was. She tells us that the thief stole 3 pottery pieces, a stone figurine, and a jade carving, which had a glyph on it that no one could translate until they hired Henrik. And apparently Henrik told them that it was like a regional place name for the area, whatever. But that theft at Chaco Canyon Cultural Center happened literally just a few days after Henrik left Chaco Canyon Cultural Center. Like, this is so sus. Also, we learn that Chaco Canyon Cultural Center has had contact with Taylor Sinclair. Like, I guess he reached out to them at some point prior to the thefts and everything. But the director, she said, I didn't end up doing business with him because he seemed kind of slippery. Which is hilarious. The next time we go to the hospital to visit Henrik, we show him the picture of the Pakal carving that we got from Taylor. And he remembers Pakal, and he remembers that this is the stolen carving. He says he must have been the one to take it, but he doesn't know why he would do that. Can't remember why he would have done that. And he can't remember where it is, where he put it, but he knows that it's still in the museum. He says something about how he knows that he had to protect him being Pakal, King Pakal, the carving. And he knows that something was going on at the museum, and he was the only one who could stand in the way.
All right. This motive just got a lot more interesting.
So much more interesting. And he can't remember anything else about the situation, but he gives Nancy a key that he found in his pockets when he got to the hospital. This key that he gives us ends up unlocking one of his desk drawers. And the plot thickens even more.
I love this so much.
Inside his desk drawer, we can find a floppy disk and a notebook full of instructions on, wait for it, how to contact smugglers with his ham radio.
Oh.
There are also notes in his drawer that detail some travels he must have done in Central America when he was younger. According to these notes, it was his friend's idea to start the smuggling operation in order to pay, like, their student loans. LOL. Oh my God.
Some friend named Big Bunny.
Yes, Big Bunny. Okay, so yeah, these notes in his desk drawer also detail a legend that they were told in their travels about a Maya scribe who wrote an account that somehow defamed King Pakal. And she ended up disappearing along with all of her writings. And the rumor is that Pakal banished her to the reaches of the netherworld. And they say that she haunted the area that they were traveling at the time. And also that she won't rest, the scribe won't rest until her writings are unearthed and her name is restored. So fascinating.
Mm-hmm.
Also in his desk drawer, there are some notes on his glyph translating from the monolith, maybe. It's not super clear. But we can take those notes to show to Henrik as well. Unfortunately, when we get back to the hospital, Henrik is sleeping, so we can't talk to him. But we can go ahead and post his notes up on the corkboard for him to see on his own, and we can come back later. When we do come back later, we see that Henrik has translated some of the notes that we left. Looks like he was translating glyphs from the monolith, like I suggested, and apparently, this is what they say. A curse upon you who beholds this terror. The evil deeds of the whisperer of silent secrets remain undead within this prison of rock, broken only when the 4 corners of the world are bound together, when the first king ascends the throne again, when the last Copan fool has labored till the end of time. Oh my God! So cool! Also, on this note, we see a glyph drawn with the translation stone, and Henrik's floppy disk, which we found in his desk, I think, was password protected, and so this glyph is the password to that disc. So now we can get into that as well. So when we go look at it, it tells us that the prison, aka the monolith, can be opened with 6 different keys based on the riddle, right, that we read that was left in the glyphs. One of these keys is each of the 4 corners of the earth. There's also a key for the fool and a key for the king, and each piece fits into like this cube shape that we have to assemble. So it looks like Henrik was trying to track down these keys to open the monolith before someone else could. And his notes say that the north key was the one that was stolen in the Chaco Canyon Cultural Center heist. The south key was likely owned and stolen from Prudence Rutherford. The east key was maybe found in a dig by Bishop Diego de Luanda in 1652, but hasn't been like seen since then. And the west key was sold at auction to someone named Henry Albert Daddle IV. And Henrik has a number for that person. So maybe we should try to contact him. His notes also say that we can radio for delivery of the Copan Fool key from his like smuggler friend's operation. So now we have to work on gathering all of these 6 different pieces to assemble this key. You want to take it?
Oh, sure. So now we're going to call this Henry Daddle person who says that his great-great-grandfather, the Henry Daddle IV or whatever, he is the one who purchased this jade carving actually at an auction. And so we're like, that's great. Do you think that we could have your great-grandfather's prized possession? And he's like, oh, well, no, actually, I gave it to my daughter, Penelope. And if you'd like, here's her phone number. Why don't you call her directly? So we call Penelope, and she says, no, I don't go by Penelope anymore. Or at least the art world doesn't call me that. Please call me by my artist's name, Poppy Dada. So this is the same artist from Taylor's office, the one that is the like up and coming Dadaist, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Nancy, of course, recognizes her name from the painting in Taylor's office, and she says that she knows exactly what jade carving we're talking about. She glued it to her painting.
Oh, God.
What? And she actually tells us that old Big Bunny Taylor. What? Big Bunny Taylor, just some weird nickname that he used to use. He's actually her art dealer. He should still have that painting with the jade carving on it. And in fact, you can just go ahead and peel that carving off. You can have it.
Oh,
just
God.
go over to Taylor's office. Don't tell him you're doing this, by the way, because he'll say something about like, ruining the commodification and commercialization of artwork and stuff. And I don't believe in that stuff. This is all part of my artistic process, because something about how she thinks that art should be something that is organic and grow naturally.
Right.
So it's normal for it to change over time and for someone to take something off and add something new. And she actually thinks that that's like a really great concept for her piece. So she really wants us to go do this.
Yeah.
But she just tells us, don't tell Taylor though, because he'll get mad. Right. So she says, go take it, but you have to put something in its place. And it has to fit the theme of the painting, which is Deadly Midnight Snack. And it's got some like sharks and stuff on it. So it's fun.
Yeah.
But then, okay, so the next day we're going to go visit him. And when we do, he ends up leaving the room because he's having some stomach problems from some expired cookies that he ate. It's so gross. But anyway, he leaves the room. So this gives us a perfect opportunity. We're actually going to take one of these cookies and swap it out for the jade carving. And he doesn't end up noticing. So great. Henrik's disc, going back to the museum now, Henrik's disc actually gives us the last trivia question that we need to answer that one trivia question on the second level in the pyramid that we weren't able to answer before. So now we're able to go in, answer that, and we get down into the third level. And on this level, there is a calendar game that we have to do. So we have to like learn a little bit about the Maya calendar, which is really cool. But then there's also a final quiz that has another unanswerable question. It's something about like, is this the one that the Maya were scared of?
Yeah. What
were they afraid of?
Or their greatest fear or something. Yeah.
Yes. So we go and we do, all the stuff in the pyramid, but we can't finish it just yet. So we're going to go back to the list of items that Henrik has us compiling here. And now we're going to contact some smugglers. But first we need a password, because in order to contact these smugglers, we have to contact them by ham radio. And in order to do so, we have to send a password in Morse code before anyone will take our message or whatever. And now the password is a word in Nahuatl. It's a word for snake, which of course we don't speak this language. So we have to go find someone who does, which luckily Alejandro is fluent in it. But he's having some trouble with his memory right now as well. And in fact, he needs us to show him the provenance documents about the Pakal carving. And he says that should be enough to jog his memory. So basically, we have to go get these documents from the museum, give them to him, and then he will tell us that the word that we need is Coatl. So, all right, we've given him the documents. We go back to the museum, and we're going to fire up the ham radio. But one of the tubes is broken, so we have to replace it. Luckily, there's a second ham radio in the museum in one of the displays, actually. So we just swap out the part from that, and we get the radio working. We send the password in Spanish, and then basically we just have to tell them that we want this Copan pool, and then that's it. And we just kind of leave it as is. And then we get a message in Spanish that the parcel will be sent as soon as possible. And that's it.
I will say too, the game does not give you any help with this really. They don't translate the Spanish for you. The only reason I knew what they were saying is because I can speak a little bit of Spanish, you know what I mean? And so it's if you're a child and you're playing this, you have no idea what's going on. You're well, I hope that was right. That's all you got,
Yeah. Yeah, this is a little difficult.
Yeah, it's tough. It's a little hard.
Especially when you're 7 years old playing this for the first time, or maybe we were probably a little bit older than that, but yeah. Maybe less than 10. We were young.
I think I want to look it up now, but I feel like these games were rated 10 and older. Is that
this
accurate?
came out in 2002, so we were
10 and up.
We were 11 when this was released.
But on the cover, it says for mystery fans 10 and up.
Oh. Yeah. I don't know why I thought the games were 8 and up.
Some of them might be, but I know on this one in particular, because I have the page open right now, it says 10 and up.
Awesome.
So, yeah.
Well, it's difficult. If you're a 10-year-old, this one is going to be a little difficult because you're also having to do the Morse code and stuff too. So you're translating from Spanish into Morse code.
It's real work, y'all. And the fact that it's just so interesting because I think about games. This might be a conversation for the end, but I think about games targeted to kids these days, and I think about this game, and I'm they expected a whole heck of a lot out of us of retaining information, of picking up on these subtle things that adults are saying about each other, greedy museum curators and Taylor making these things about how Mexico lost its sense of humor. I'm we're 10 years old, and you're having us translate. First of all, translate words into Spanish, then translate those Spanish words into Morse code, communicating with smugglers, reading somebody's notes about glyph translation that you have to remember. You have to encode that information. Oh my gosh, right?
Yeah.
Whereas what are 10-year-olds playing these days? Fortnite?
At 10, I was lucky if I could find Mexico on a map. Not really. But Guatemala, I probably would have struggled with that at 10 years old.
Oh, God. Yeah. I'd struggle with that today. I probably couldn't point out Guatemala to you. My gosh. So, wow.
Yeah.
But, we ate it up. We ate it up.
Oh, my gosh. I love this game. The edutainment value alone was enough to get 10-year-old me into it, But it took me so long. And there's just so much to do in this. And now, of course, playing it today as adults, it's going to be a lot easier. Obviously, we've played it hundreds of times, so we know exactly what needs to be done and what to do for all of these things. But playing it for the first time, this one took me months to solve. Because you're having to do, not hours every day, but a few hours a week. It took me a long, long time to actually win this game. Never mind that the ending took me a month on its own because I cried because I was so scared of it. And I would just like not
Oh.
play because I was too afraid to play, and to finally force myself to just go in and finish it.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, it's a long game if you really do take the time to
And it's just such complex tasks for like a 10-year-old's reasoning skills. Like I'm thinking about that. I'm like, how did we were so smart. My gosh, this game really did train us to use those critical thinking and, and read into things.
Oh yeah.
Be detectives, That's so great.
It's so good.
Anyway, sorry. I didn't mean to interrupt you. It just
Oh no, you're good. I also love the just how much Spanish language we're using, how much we're learning about the history and culture of just Central America, I guess. Well, Mexico is part of North America. But yeah, Mexico and Central America, getting to do that because this is the only instance in any of the games that we ever talk about Mexico or Central America, the only time we ever use any Spanish at all. I mean, obviously it's set in Washington, D.C., so it's not like some of the other games where we're like, set in Mexico. I just would love for the future of the series. Hopefully we'll get a game set in like Mexico or a game set in Costa Rica, somewhere.
Yeah, gosh,
somewhere
that'd be cool.
on this side of the world that's not just the US because we just haven't had anything over here and it's high time that we do.
Yeah.
Anyway, so let's see. So we do everything on the ham radio and essentially we need to come back later because a delivery is going to be made probably by like tomorrow or the next day. So really at this point, we can just like go to bed and come back if we want to. We can go talk to other people. Obviously, you can do a lot of this in whatever order you want to. But when we come back to the museum, like the next day, we're going to get a crate there in the shipping and receiving area. And there's a little puzzle on the box that you have to do to open it. But when you do open it, we do find a piece of jade. A jade carving in there that's like sort of cube shaped, but then a lot of the sides are missing. So obviously this is where other pieces of jade will fit in later. But now we have all these deliveries arriving. Now we're going to go talk to Henrik, and he tells us that the Whisperer, the scribe that was mentioned, basically the reason that Pakal wanted this person to be banished was because she like essentially insinuated that the only reason Pakal was king is that his mom pulled strings for him. I guess Nepo baby again.
Yeah. Maybe that should have been one of our 3 words.
Nepo baby.
Nepo babies. King Pakal, Nancy Drew, #Nepo babies.
So what we think happened after Pakal found out about this is not that he banished her. It's that he put her and all of her writings inside of a tomb and sealed it shut. And we go, wait a minute. A large rock tomb? Do you mean the monolith, Henrik? Are you telling us that the monolith is really a tomb and that there's a body in there?
We were 10 years old.
Yeah.
Everyone, we were 10 years old.
It was horrifying. And Henrik tells us that he is certain that there is a dirty rat trying to get their way inside of that monolith. Maybe to get those
Dirty
writings.
Rat? Dirty rodent. Dirty bunny?
Oh.
Sorry.
That's a fun leap. I didn't even think about that, but yeah. But we ask him to tell us more, and he cannot remember anything. So we also tell him that we got the Copan Fool key from his friends, but we need the Pakal piece that he stole. And he says that he remembers he hid the carving.
Let's call it that.
He hid the Pakal carving in the bottom of the pyramid, and we have to get past the computer quiz. So we're like, well, we can't because there's this unanswerable question. And he tells us that Sunny set this up.
Yeah.
And actually nobody knows what the Maya were afraid of, or if anything, like there was nothing that all Maya people were afraid of. So it's really a ridiculous question. Sunny just set this up because he was afraid of something himself and made that the answer. So the answer is that it's, I'm going to say this wrong, Coati Mundi, Coatimundi, which I guess is like an animal or something.
Okay, I thought it was a snake, but I'm looking it up right now because I was like, wait a second, what is that?
So like a skunk?
Kind of, yeah. It's a mammal, diurnal mammal, native to Mexico, but looks a little bit like a lemur, or it's got a really long tail, or what is it? What am I thinking of? similar to like mongoose, weasel, that kind of thing. It belongs to both the cat and bear family, so it's like a bear cat kind of a thing.
No wonder Sunny's afraid of it.
Also it's kind of scary looking. It has the nickname Hog-Nosed Raccoon.
Oh.
I don't know.
Okay. Well, Sunny's afraid of this creature, and he, for some reason, made that the password to the final quiz. So we solve the quiz, we play everything in this final level of the tomb, and in doing so, this unlocks this, like, recreated tomb. It's like a replica tomb of Pakal's, like, burial mask and everything.
Yeah.
So it's basically just like a coffin with a fake jade mask that would have covered Pakal's skull in his tomb. So we open this tomb, and inside, underneath the jade mask, he put it in the skull's mouth.
Yeah.
But it's the Pakal carving. This is where Henrik hid it. So we take it. Hooray! And the machine also pops out a glow stick for a prize, which obviously we will need later. This is a first in a long string of instances where Nancy can only use a glow stick to navigate around dark places. Someone please get this girl a flashlight. Like, come on. Do you want to take it from here?
Sure. So now that we have this Pakal carving, we can call Mr. Rose and get Joanna reinstated, right? When we talk to him, he's of course very pleased, and we tell him though, like, the case is not closed though, like stuff's still going on, and we can't explain everything right now. But he doesn't like that, of course, but he will reinstate Joanna. And Joanna, once she returns to the museum, she's very happy with us for clearing her name, but we don't dwell on that for very long because there is so much work that we got to do now that we're back. And she tells us to go unpack a crate in the storeroom and gives us an access code to unlock that crate. And it just so happens that the box that Joanna wants us to unpack, inside of it, is an ornamental jade carving from the Diego de Landa expedition. The East Key. It's the East Key. We just open it and we just have it, which is insane. So that's 4 keys down and 1 to go, because we've got the piece from the Papi Dada painting, we've got the Copan Fool piece, we've got the Pakal carving, and now we have this East Key. So that's 4. Franklin Rose can also give us the contact information for Prudence Rutherford at this point, because apparently he just happens to know her from, wait for it, judging a mime competition back when he lived in Wichita.
What else is there to do in Kansas? I mean, just kidding.
Wild. But he'll call ahead to Prudence to have her to let her know to expect our call. When we do finally reach out to Prudence, she answers and tells us that Franklin did reach out to her and that she'll do whatever she can to help us catch these rapscallions who violated the sanctity of her domicile.
That's how she talks, actually.
Yeah, that's a direct quote. She says that the glyph on her necklace may mean south, and so this, we realize, must be the South Key. We ask for a photo of it, but she says that she can actually do us one better. The insurance company made an exact replica of this jade carving because they wanted her to wear that instead of wearing the real artifact, obviously. But she, like, hated that. She was like, no, it's art. It's meant to be worn and experienced or whatever. And so she would not do it, but she still has it. And so she'll send that to us.
Perfect.
Cool. And she also tells us that once we find the people responsible for this, to give them a sound thrashing.
We'll try. We will try.
We'll do our best, Prudence. And eventually that package will also arrive at the museum, and inside is the replica of the South Key. Then we also need to call Chaco Canyon Cultural Center back and ask if there is any way that we can get some kind of replica of their stolen jade carving. And she says she'll talk to her staff and see what they can figure out. And when we do call her back, she tells us that actually they still have the original box that the piece was packed in their museum, and the foam it was encased in was like built exactly for that jade carving. So maybe we can use this foam to somehow recreate it. This feels like a little bit of a stretch to me. Like, I don't think this would actually work, but Okay. We'll do what we can.
I mean, I think you could get the right size and shape okay, but definitely not all the detail on the carving itself.
Well, it's also, yeah, that's what's interesting to me is because we'll have to talk about that later. Anyway, so once she sends that and that arrives at the museum, we can take that and make a mold using the foam with this special tool in the lab that's like literally made to make things from molds. Anyway, and once that's done, we have all the pieces and we can assemble the whole keep. Which turns out to just be like this cube. And once it's assembled, we can take it to insert into the monolith. But first, we need to grab the calendar stones from the exhibit down in the bottom of the pyramid. Or no, sorry, not the pyramid. They're in the glass case in the main hall. Because we'll also need those too. And so you have to take those calendar stones, put them in the monolith, and then set the date to Pakal's ascension date according to the riddle, right? Because once the king ascends, I think that's what riddle says. And so in order to even do that, you have to, this is just what I'm saying, is this game is so next level. Like, picture it 10 years old, you're like not knowing what to do next, to have to think back to the riddle, because they don't give you any help with this. I mean, if you call your friends, they'll give you like a hint or whatever, but like you have to know to go get those calendar stones. Then you have to know how to be able to set the correct date, which means harkens back to the numbering exhibit that you had to learn about. So you have to use that knowledge, and you have to find what the correct month is with the glyph, which you find in somewhere else in the bottom of the pyramid. And so it's just like so much thinking that you have to do to even get here. Anyway, so you have to do that. And then once you set that correctly to the right date, a part of the monolith, like a little hole in the monolith, opens on one side of it where you can insert the key. But you have to insert it the correct way, like with the correct part of the cube going in.
Yeah, like the south key has to be put into the south side of the monolith, yeah.
And then when you do that, a new hole opens on the other side of the monolith where you have to do it again. You have to put like the north key in the right, like side on the north side. So you have to do that all the way around the monolith until you put it in at the front facing part of it. And inside it opens, and inside is a mummy. It's the banished scribe holding a scroll or a book or something of her writings. You can even open them and you'll see that inside the book is just like blank, which is really interesting. And then suddenly we hear a voice from behind us say, "Who's your friend, Nancy?" And then Nancy is pushed into the monolith.
This is the part that was terrifying for me as a child. Getting locked into this small space with a corpse.
Because that's literally what happens. You gotta take it.
Oh, sure. So we get pushed into the monolith by Taylor Sinclair. He snatches the writings from us and gets super cruel out of nowhere. He says, "Hey, you've been a top-notch assistant. We're not your assistant, first of all. We're Joanna's assistant." But he says that we are not going to make it in the art world. And supposedly he's been watching us this whole time?
This is interesting. I want to talk about this later, too.
Definitely.
Yeah.
So he also tells us that basically he wanted us to like solve all of this for him because he knew that this book was in there. So he explains a little bit more. He says this book holds, obviously it's the Whisperer's writings, but essentially this is one of the only known personal accounts of Maya life anywhere, especially specifically for Pakal's time. So this is a really significant item for just, history overall, but also it's going to get him a fortune on the black market. Of course, Nancy's like, "It's not yours to sell. This is wrong. What are you doing?" And he says, "Nope, I don't believe in that. Finders keepers. It's all mine now." And then he says something about how it's going to be a shock for the next person to open this monolith because when they do, they're going to find the bodies of this century-old scribe and a 21st century detective.
Oh!
Terrifying.
Oh my gosh.
Then he shuts the door and locks us in. Now we're in here, trapped face to face with the skeleton and very little oxygen.
It's not a skeleton though. Like it's a preserved mummy.
Yeah.
So it's like that's a little more scary to me because like the leathery skin,
that's like
yes, like mummified skin within the face. Oh my god.
Well, and there's like a chair almost in the room,
Right.
and so it's like sitting on the chair with like its knees pulled up to the chest, and then it's got its hands like on the side of the face, like it's like
screaming, like
Scream the picture or the painting, yeah. Is that
the Scream?
The Scream, yeah.
The Scream?
Scream is a movie. The
Scream is a movie.
Yeah. It looks just like that painting, the way that she's sitting, and her mouth is like, yeah. Anyway, it's horrifying. But luckily we have that glow stick.
Oh yeah, light of the glow stick, real helpful.
But there's no other light in here, obviously. So this is the only way that we can get out of here.
Yeah.
So there are 2 holes just in the walls of this monolith on the inside. And if we pry the mummy's jaw open, we find
God.
Oh, yeah, it's horrible. This is why it took me like a month to solve it, because I didn't want to reach in that mummy's mouth. I was like, well, I'm just going to turn the game off if that's what it's going to make me do. I'm like crying and 10 years old, and my sister's younger than me, and she's like, what's wrong with you? Just do it. But so we pry the mummy's mouth open, and inside is like a stone stick, basically. And so you stick that stick into one of the holes in the side of the monolith, and then it opens this secret compartment. And inside the secret compartment is a second book and another little like stone thing. It's actually flower shaped this time. But that book is the actual writings of the Whisperer.
Yeah.
So now we have the actual thing, because Taylor's version, his is blank. And
Taylor's version. Oh my god.
So now we have the real one here now. So it's actually fine if Taylor gets away with it, because he's not really getting away with anything, and we already know that he's guilty. So now we take that little flower stone piece, we stick it into another hole in the side of the monolith, and that just opens the door. Now we get the cheesiest ending possibly in the entire series.
One thing I do want to mention before we get onto the cheesiest ending in the entire series is that, like, throughout the entire time that you are doing that you're trying to, like, get these little pieces put into the slots on the wall on the inside of the monolith, Nancy is saying, like, I have to get out of here. I'm going to run out of air. I can't breathe.
Mm-hmm.
The whole time.
Yeah.
10 years old, in the dark, with a glow stick, prying open Money's mouth while Nancy's like, I can't breathe.
Yeah. It's terrifying. This is so scary.
So intense.
So scary for a little child. Yeah.
Anyway, sorry. Continue.
Yes. And then supposedly Henrik has made a miraculous recovery.
Right.
Because he, Joanna, and Alejandro just come out of nowhere and start congratulating us in the form of a poem that they're all reciting together about how from the depths of time, the Whisperer acknowledges her thanks to the detective, about how Nancy is like this mermaid emerging from the tomb, and like, I don't know, it's this really weird,
so bizarre,
goofy poem that I almost think that we need to pull up the transcript for and just read it, because it's so bizarre. Can we find it?
Yeah, let me see. Okay, I found it. I found the text shows up on the bottom so I can read it. So Alejandro says, behold, our heroine emerges from the tomb like a mermaid from the sea. Meanwhile, Henrik says, the foolish villain stews in the sour soup of his own miscalculation. So it's literally like they are forecasting what Taylor is like doing like on his own.
You are telling me you guys all stood there and witnessed what happened and didn't step in to help and are just there when we emerge from the tomb?
And then Joanna says, from deep in the recesses of time, a wise royal scribe whispers her thanks. And then and then Alejandro says, and a priceless chapter of history is rescued from obscurity. Way to go, Nancy. And then that's it.
Yeah.
And then we see the shot of Taylor after. But like, what? This is so bananas. It's so weird.
It's so goofy. Such a silly little scene. But anyway, while they're saying all this, we also get a cut scene of Taylor opening up his book and realizing that everything is blank and that he has been duped.
Yeah.
Now we get a little wrap-up letter. We are again writing to Carson. We tell him that now that all the scribe's writings have been recovered, Henrik is actually getting to work on the translation because, of course, his memory has now been restored as well, so he's back at work. Taylor has gone to prison, and Alejandro discovered that the Pakal carvings provenance documents were completely faked by Taylor. Why write in the thing about the old people dying?
Yeah.
If they were fake. Yeah, anyway. So the board arranged for a return of the Pakal carving to Mexico right away. And as thanks, Mexico has pledged a new era of diplomacy between themselves and Beach Hill.
This is great and everything, but this feels unrealistic because you're telling me that they discovered their senior attaché at their I forget his title at their consulate discovered that the provenance of all of these documents were faked by the person who arranged the deal for Beach Hill Museum, and because they're just oh well, we'll return it right away, we didn't know, they're great, we'll do all these new deals with you. Are you kidding me? No.
You get brownie points for your honesty.
They would be blacklisted. Are you serious? Oh my God.
Mexico should pursue some legal action against them for all of this, if anything.
Anyway, sorry.
Anyway, so also we learned that the board has agreed to give Joanna another chance as curator, provided that she no longer does business with people like Taylor. I would hope not anyway. And then also, side note, happy ending, Poppy Dada has found new inspiration and all of her new paintings are featuring red handprints.
So cute.
The end.
Yeah.
Oh, and then we get our, of course, little teaser trailer for the next game, of course, which cannot be
Ghost
ignored.
Dogs. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Oh, wow. Wow, oh, wow.
Okay. First of all, how did the scribe the Whisperer have all the stuff inside of there with her to get out and never got out?
I thought, I had this thought too while I was doing it. It's pretty clear to me that she must have been dead when they put her in there. They must have murdered her before they put her inside of the tomb.
You think so?
Well, they put the piece in her mouth. So unless they sewed her mouth shut, with the piece inside of it, there's no way that she died from being trapped in there unless she didn't spit the piece out of her mouth before, which she would do.
I assumed that she had been put in there alive and then put the thing in her own mouth to hide it something. Hide from who, though? Yeah, no, I think the way they set up this mythos of the scribe being put in there makes it seem like she must have been put in there as a banishment kind of a thing. He wasn't killing her, he was banishing her. But I think that's just the legend that they created in order to make it seem less severe and keep kind of Pakal, make him seem better than he actually was, when in reality they just murdered her and put her in here. I think there's also an interpretation too where it's they put her in here for a spiritual reason, right? To stop her spirit from entering the afterworld. So that's also part of it, part of the banishment. But yeah, really they just killed her, I think. That makes so much more sense. Okay, that explains everything, first of all. And it also makes it a lot better just in scary terms, because all these 20 years I've been thinking that they intentionally suffocated the scribe. Okay. Yeah. Well, that's a little bit better. I assumed that Nancy would suffer the same fate because maybe that's what it was. Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's definitely I feel even in retrospect, that's the memory that I took from the game is that she must have been trapped in there. The scribe must have been, but it's clearly not the case when you play it. It has to have been that she was dead.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh,
so,
well, that's dark.
I know. It's really dark. It's really freaking dark.
That explains why they didn't explain it specifically in the game, though, too. Because her interactive was not about to be all right, children, let's talk about how she died.
Yeah.
Let's get real detailed with it. No. Okay. Well, anyway.
I do want to talk a little bit about the monolith, though, in like the way that the game mechanics work. Like, so I think it's very cool and I love it and I wouldn't change a thing. I'm going to just go ahead and say it. But then we do need to talk a little bit how unrealistic the like ancient like technology is, right? Because essentially all we have is this cube. And the cube is the key, right?
Yeah.
And yes, there are carvings on each side, but how does that work? How is it that you are inserting a very specific carving into one side of a monolith and then another side of it opens? Like, I know that the Maya were a very advanced civilization. I'm not saying that, like, you know, they would, you know, that
they wouldn't have been sophisticated.
Right. I just don't think that that was how, even today, I don't think that's how you could do that. You could pull that off. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's like, pretty far-fetched, yeah.
It's pretty far-fetched. And I feel like if it were me, I'm like, can't we just make any cube that's the right size? Or like, when the little hole opens, can we not just like put our hand in there and push whatever?
Yeah, just push the button back.
Push the button back? Like, why do we have to track down all of these very specific little keys and make a replica out of a foam piece that I'm sure doesn't have like the carved I'm sure to that level it's not that detailed, this foam piece. So really we're just having
you that it is.
But they tell you that it is. Yeah. So I mean, I don't know. I just think it's a little far-fetched. But I accept it. I love it. I think it was the right thing to do. I just think it's funny.
Of course, yeah.
It's just not really realistic. But again, we don't play the games for realism. So.
Of course, yeah. that would not make it as fun, you know?
No.
If you get to just put your finger in there.
Exactly.
Oh, well.
Exactly. Yeah. But I think, so it's so interesting that we played this after we played Seven Keys, because it's so interesting to think about them both and like how both of them work, and how one of my major critiques of Seven Keys was how we didn't spend it. Actually, we spent the time gathering the keys. We spent the time gathering like schematics to make the keys, which is just not really compelling or interesting. Especially because there's supposed to be 7 of them, and in this game there are 6 pieces of the keys, and I just think, or 6 key pieces, and I think in this game it's just such a better way to do it, because it's not even that we are gathering all of the original 6 pieces of this cube key. We have 2 different replicas that we use, you know, within that, like, and some of them get sent to us. Some of them we pull out of one of them we pull out of a painting. One of them we find in the bottom of the temple. You know what I mean? And so it's like really varied in what you're doing and how you're doing it. Whereas I feel like in Mystery of the Seven Keys, they were really married to the idea of like having the exact keys, or like the exact right thing. Whereas I feel like if you had kind of taken a page out of the Secret of the Scarlet Hand playbook, you could have like have Nancy find, you know, 3 keys, and then she finds 2 schematics and they forge those keys, and but she still has to get this 1 key, and so you can do all these different things. It doesn't have to be one or the other, you know,
right?
To kind of like cobble together a way to solve the puzzle of how to get into the vault. Like, you know, one of them could be hidden in the cafe like it is, and one, you would get the schematic from the alchemy lab, but we still have to get, you know, 2 more keys. One of the keys we actually have to steal from one of the current key holders. Like, it could be a whole thing, you know what I mean? So yeah, so I think this game definitely had the right idea with how it did it, and it's just so clever in the way that they make you as like Nancy track them down, you know, like it's just smart.
It was done so well. Yeah, the structure of the game is absolutely fantastic.
Yeah. Okay, yeah, so can let's talk a little bit about Taylor.
Yes.
Our culprit. So yeah, totally didn't realize or forgot that he was Big Bunny. I don't know where that was in my consciousness, but I didn't even remember it until you mentioned it. I didn't even realize it in my playthrough. So that's interesting. So he was friends with Henrik when they were young, I guess just out of school or something.
Or at least they worked together in some way on this dig.
Some capacity. And they were down on this dig, and they decide together, we're going to start this smuggling operation so that we can earn money, get money. And then at some point, presumably, Henrik has a change of heart and decides to just work against him. Like, this feels like a little bit of a plot hole to me, because we don't really ever learn from Henrik. Like, we don't have any motive from Henrik for, like, changing his mind and suddenly trying to protect this.
Unless it's just simply he's started feeling like Taylor was going too far, but we don't really have that explanation.
We don't get any, explanation like that.
We also don't know what actually happened to Prudence's real necklace or to the one from the Chaco Canyon Cultural Center. So did Henrik commit those thefts and then hid them for safety, quote unquote, or did Taylor do all that?
Yeah, like at what point is Henrik stealing all these things? And at what point are they in the hands of smugglers? And if Henrik is working with the smugglers, why can't he get them to open the monolith if he's still under the guise of working with them, which it seems like he is, unless there's been some kind of falling out that hasn't been explained.
Right.
I guess Taylor is the one who pushes Henrik off of the temple.
He has to have been, unless it was an accident, which doesn't feel like it would be.
Right. And the reason why he did that was why?
To push him down the stairs?
Yeah.
Maybe they had an argument that, like, Henrik went to go hide it, and Taylor's like, all right, give it to me. And Henrik's like, no, I'm not giving it to you because I'm against this and everything. And that's when he pushed him or something.
Yeah. I don't know. There's just things aren't quite meeting up in my brain there, and I'm not sure why. I just feel like we don't have enough information about how things went down. Information that I really wish I had, because I feel like it would... I don't know. There's already a lot to this game, so I don't necessarily blame them for not doing this, and maybe it's a little bit too dark for a kid's game to really go there. But I feel like Henrik... we're played off as him being like this good guy because he's trying to protect Pakal, the Pakal carving, and protect the monolith as a thing, as, a cultural object or whatever. But he started by smuggling.
Right.
Like, so it just feels like a bit of a jump, Like, and I'm not quite comfy with it.
I don't doubt that Henrik is legitimately, now he's on our side, that he feels guilty about all this and that he genuinely was trying to do all this to protect the Pakal carving, but it's just not clear to me when the change happened or why. Or if it even matters, so.
Because clearly he went to school for this stuff, you know what I mean? And clearly he's been on digs, and so he's been doing this work for a long time. But, like, he started it wasn't like he went to school and then learned how wrong it was to do those things. Like, he did all of this at the start of his professional career, really, it seems like. So...
was that a money thing that he just needed to pay off his student loans?
Well, but then once he paid off his student loans, he was like, never mind, I'm good, we should stop. And Taylor is like, no?
Yeah, I doubt that.
Right? That's also not great. Like, it's not like okay, well, now that I have enough money, I'm done stealing. It's like, okay, well, cool, I guess.
Yeah, I don't know.
Anyway, it's interesting.
For Taylor to, one, somehow know that we're a detective this whole time, and to have been watching us?
Right. What is that? What's going on there? Because clearly Taylor was trying to get into the monolith to get the Whisperer's writings. We know that. Henrik knew that. Henrik was trying to stop him, and Nancy comes in on that plot. But when does Taylor find out that Nancy is, like, working towards this as well, and that she's someone he needs to be following? Because how else would he have, like, encountered us outside of the monolith? Like, he had to have been following Nancy. So when did that happen, and why?
I mean, I guess he knows we're working on it because we go ask him a lot about stuff in the museum and about art and stuff, but that doesn't mean, like, he knows to follow us to find the Whisperer.
I mean, I guess he did. He is the one who like tasked us with figuring out what was going on and protecting the museum right at the very beginning. He's like, something weird's going on. I heard you're a detective, come figure it out. But it just seems like an awful assumption to think that we would figure it out, I don't know.
Yeah.
Maybe it was just convenient, and maybe he was just like, I'm just going to keep an eye on her. And then once he started realizing, I guess what we did do is we did send a message to the smugglers to have them deliver the piece to the museum. And if he's in league with the smugglers, it's possible that they told him about it. And so he knew that we were trying to reassemble the key. And then at that point, that's going to be my headcanon.
I bet that's what it is, though, too, because clearly the smugglers, if they're sending it to Beach Hill, they probably think it's Henrik calling, or Henrik and Taylor together. And so they're probably like, hey, Taylor, did you get it? And he's like, what?
Yeah. And also, he knew it wouldn't have been Henrik because Henrik is in the hospital.
Right. And so he figures out that it's Nancy. Okay. Yeah. I'm happy with that. That makes sense to me.
There we go. Yep. Mystery solved.
Yes.
Okay, let's see. There's another plot hole that I found in this game. Okay. So the Scarlet Hand notes. So Henrik says that he's the original author of the work, which means he left the Scarlet Hand note at the scene of the crime when he stole the claw carving in order to keep it from Taylor. The Scarlet Hand notes were also left at Prudence Rutherford's house and the Chaco Canyon Cultural Center.
So he did commit those thefts.
So did he?
I guess.
But that was before he ever worked at Beach Hill. That was before I think maybe the monolith had just been discovered or something. But he didn't have an opportunity to translate those glyphs, right? Until he got here.
Oh.
And so how did he know that he needed those things?
Oh.
Until he read the poem and started taking his notes and figuring it all out.
He wouldn't have been able to.
I mean, unless there was a picture maybe and he saw it and was like, oh, I can see what that means. But that seems must be really difficult to do from far away.
I mean, he already knew, obviously, the legend of the monolith, or the legend of the scribe and her being banished or whatever, but that doesn't mean that he knows that all these specific jade pieces need to be put together for the monolith.
Because that's what the translation of the monolith tells us. It lays it out. It's the riddle, right? So, I don't know. It also doesn't really seem logical to me that he did steal those other pieces for that reason, but also because of the fact that, I don't know, it just doesn't make sense why. What reason would he have?
For the Chaco Canyon Cultural Center, I get that, because it took place, the theft took place right after he left, and he left because he found out about the monolith. So maybe he came, figured out, oh, I need this piece. He goes back, steals it, comes back to Beach Hill, and then sometime in this time also steals Prudence's necklace. That would make sense, right?
I'm just trying to think about his motivation, right? Because he tells us that he's trying to stop Taylor, right, presumably, or the smugglers or whoever, from accessing inside of the monolith. Is that what it is?
Right.
Because then, okay, if that's the case, why are you trying to open it?
Oh, yeah. He's just trying to keep the key parts away so that nobody else can.
I understand as a historian, you want to go in.
Sure.
Henrik is a confusing character for me. It's just not clear why he does what he does entirely.
Yeah.
I mean, you can stretch it, you can make it fit, you can say, okay, yes, maybe somehow he did know that he needed these pieces, and yes, he's stealing them preemptively because he knows Taylor is going to try to acquire them.
But how did Taylor find out about the monolith?
Exactly. Why?
He would have known the monolith existed because he helped Joanna get it, but he's not going to know what it says because he doesn't know anything about the actual culture side of things or about the translation. So how would he know that that's what he needs?
Well, so he was on the dig with Henrik, or wherever they were traveling in South America. So he knows the legend of the Whisperer.
Maybe they knew about the key back then and
Maybe.
just didn't say anything about it in their notes.
Maybe. And then when the monolith was found, Henrik realized that Taylor would know what it's about. Like, maybe Taylor is way more educated and in touch with all of this than is presented in the game.
Off, yeah.
Yeah. It's interesting.
Okay, I would buy that then. Yeah.
Yeah. It's just so much to think about, you guys.
Yes.
Okay, let's see what else. I mean, there's not a lot of bad things to say about this. I can't.
No,
I mean, like,
overall, it's really good.
Yeah, there's a couple of maybe plot holes, maybe if you can, you can try to figure your way out of them. But yeah, also, but like just all of the good things is really what stacks up for me.
Of course,
in this game.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? The edutainment value. There's also like just a bajillion references in this game too. On the donor plaque outside of Joanna's office, it's just full of like funny names. Also, Punchy LaRue is on that list.
That is, of course, a reference in Final Scene. The woman who voiced Bess, that's her pseudonym in the credits. She's credited. That's not her real legal name, but she's credited as Punchy LaRue. And this is the first time we get an actual in-game reference to that. And then it comes back a lot later in later games as well.
Phantom of Venice and...
Maybe it is just Phantom of Venice. But Phantom of Venice is so important for the lore anyway as well that,
True. And then let me see what else. Oh, so I just think that this game in general, it really sets up like this kind of trend for Nancy Drew games where we have Nancy going to visit places not for solving mysteries and not for a vacation, but because she's doing some kind of work there. And especially like when it comes to like the archaeology part of it, like this game is really like the kickoff for like all of our later archaeology games like Labyrinth of Lies and Tomb of the Lost Queen, where like provenance is like important, smuggling is a hot button topic and everything. And so it's just such an important game, I think, as far as like Nancy Drew history goes.
Big time.
So it's just so great.
It's really an essential game for the rest of the series. Like, you need to play this one to understand most of the references in all of the later games, which is great.
Absolutely. Something else that I thought was funny that I noticed about the game is that so Carson is headed to Nairobi in Africa, like that's part of the original setup.
Yeah.
And in the 90s TV show, that's where Ned is. And
which
that
is a smuggling episode anyway.
Is a smuggling episode. It's about smuggling.
Fun.
And so I'm like, maybe Carson is going to meet Ned in Nairobi and they're going to work on smuggling. I don't know. I just think it's just a funny and interesting parallel.
That is fun. Yeah, I like that.
Yeah. Maybe there was a little bit of inspiration, some brief inspiration from the 90s TV show for this episode.
I'm going to say that there was. That's my headcanon now.
Oh,
Ned and Carson in Nairobi together.
Yeah.
And their fetish boxes.
Oh my God. Ew. Okay, what else?
That's all I've got.
Yeah. What a great game.
It is a great game.
Flashlight score?
Oh.
There's not a lot I can say about this game. It's peak nostalgia for me, honestly.
It is.
I had so much fun replaying this game. So much fun. And so much fun to the point where I feel like a lot of the times when I'm replaying Nancy Drew games, when it comes to puzzles, I'll just like skip to like a walkthrough, just like because I know how to solve the puzzle. I just don't really want to spend the time going around doing the things to do it.
Sure.
In this game, that is not the case.
Yeah.
I relish going around, looking at all of the different exhibits, taking notes, drawing all the little glyphs so that I can remember what they mean for the temple games.
Yeah.
Like, I love doing that. And that's just not the case with other Nancy Drew games all the time, sometimes, But like, I didn't touch a walkthrough when I did this replay. I didn't have to, first of all, because I know the game so well that I don't need to,
The edutainment is so good that you want to participate in it.
Yes. Which is so crazy. That's such a feat. Like, and it's just so joyous, and I just love it so much. Even though it's not a favorite game for me, like there's nothing about it that is like particularly something I enjoy, like like the whole history aspect, that's not really my thing. Being in a museum in DC, like the setting isn't really that compelling for me, but the game in and of itself is so enjoyable.
Right.
I think it hands down deserves 5.
You think so?
Yeah.
I was going back and forth between like 4.5 and 5. Like, I'm like, it's somewhere up there. Is it a 5? I don't know if it's good as all of our other 5s, but it is so good.
It's so
I'm
good.
going to say 4.75.
Okay.
Just because it's so early, it's just not quite with the rest of the series. But otherwise, that's really its biggest drawback, is just when it was made.
Right.
Honestly.
Some of the graphics.
Sure. Which I don't even, who cares? I mean, all of these games have not the best graphics in the world.
Exactly.
Which does not detract from it in any way, for me at least. But
no. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So fun.
Yes. Well, I think the next one is going to have a little bit more of a compelling setting.
Oh my God. I mean, for me, at least, we just recorded a Scoop Says Chair. We talked about where we were ranking the settings of different games based on how much we would enjoy visiting there, like on vacation or something. And for me, this next location where this game is like literally my idea of heaven.
Aww.
It's so exciting. Everything about it is everything that I love. It is like dark and moody. It's English. It's full of like, coat of arms, history, family genealogy, man-eating plants, like just So yeah,
if
it's gonna be Curse.
Guessed it yet.
It's Curse of Blackmore Manor. I think this is actually so iconic. It might actually be my favorite game in the series. Of course, like throughout time, I have had different favorites, but like where I am now, I definitely think like this whole vibe of the game is my favorite. So,
and this was also just an extremely ambitious game for Her Interactive, just at all. So there's so much to talk about because they pack it full with, I mean, just all the different themes in the game and all the different storylines, but then also just all the activities and every fun thing that you can do. It's a huge game. Especially for the time period. Like back then, it was so much bigger than any other game that they'd ever done before.
Yeah.
So there will be a lot to say.
So much juicy information. Like
so much.
We had so many theories, I think, when it came to like Ghost of Thornton Hall, that we had to split it into 2 episodes. And I think that this might be another 2-parter, because all of the things that we could talk about as far as like the Penvillain family and the Penvillain family lore is going to be a lot.
Well, that on its own is a lot. And then also just the summary, like the plot, it's a very complicated plot. So it's lengthy in that sense. But then there's also all these layers. Once you get just beyond, hey, there might be a werewolf. After that, there's just so much more. Like it's unbelievable how much there is. You keep digging. I think that game is the number 1 game in terms of like talking about replayability with like, I've never seen that cutscene before.
Yes.
Every time I play Blackmore Manor, there's something I've never seen before.
Yeah.
And I played it so many times. And also, I don't know how there's still things that I haven't seen.
That game is hard.
Yeah. It's not an easy
game. It is not an easy game. I remember I played it for the first time with my sister, as I did most of my Nancy Drew games growing up. And we both struggled. My sister's a little bit older than me. And I think we were maybe, what year did that come out? Well, we'll talk about it, whatever. But I feel like we were at a suitable age where like, it shouldn't be that hard, but it was hard. The puzzles, the maze under the maze to get to the anyway, these are all spoilers, but like,
I think,
oh my God.
Sorry, I'm trying to do math in my head. I think it was 2004.
It's really 2 years after this?
Yeah, because there's only 4 games between, and they did 2 a year, so.
Well, I guess maybe I wasn't that old, but like, oh boy. It's a tough one. So yeah, I don't know. I may have to use a walkthrough just
That's
for
okay.
sake of time.
I'm very excited
get
to talk
through
about it,
things,
though.
But yeah, but there's going to be a lot. So very excited for that. Yay! And we'll see you then, regular Drews.
See you then.
Thank you for listening to Regular Nancy Drew. Email us at regularnancydrew@gmail.com.
If you like this episode, make sure to rate, review, and subscribe.
You can also follow us on Instagram at Regular Nancy Drew and Twitter at RegularND.
You can also support us on Patreon. Patrons at the $3 level vote on upcoming episode topics and get exclusive access to our Scoop Sesh series.
And all patrons receive early access to each episode as well as weekly bonus content.
And to all you regular Drews out there,
Thanks for listening.